Okay, thank you, Mr. Sherman. Thank you, Patricia, for inviting me to this nice conference and this symposium. So the subject I'm going to address is rather slippery. I think that, of course, in front of such a giant, it's difficult to find some words that have not already been said by others. Of course, there have been a lot of studies on Nervi. Here we have eminent researchers such as Professor Chiurino and Mario Sassone at Politecnico of Torino. But actually the reason why I'm going to talk about this is because I think we might somehow try to summarize his main message, which is mainly a structural architecture message, which is, I think, well suited to this context. So the three aspects I'm going to highlight are intuition, geometry, and computation. These are three aspects that combined basically might enable us to trace a sort of path in his conceptual works. There are a lot of keywords that has to be said. These keywords reflect the fact that I think the main message he conveyed to us, let's say his heritage, is in the fact that there are principles that hold. Not technical solutions, not details or of the moment, but there are principles. So somehow he was very well rooted on the ground, and maybe this fact enabled him to jump very high. So somehow it seems to me that throughout his production, his activities, he was always trying to point out that the principle holds. Actually, to me, it has been very useful to talk with Robert Einaudi, who was his former student, and he came from the States, and actually he is the translator of his famous book, which is Aesthetics and Technology in Building. So he came from Cornell University just to take notes out of his lectures. Now are going to be published in these months. And so there are a lot of insights in his teaching. Because probably when you teach, somehow you are with students, so maybe you somehow allow yourself to express more, let's say, not diplomatic statements, which maybe clarify your point of view. So the occasion of studying Nervi came from this project I've been involved with since a couple of years, which actually is strictly related to the message that Professor Chiurino said before. There is an international conference nowadays in Brussels, and this is the first of a series of conferences, and this is within a more general research project about Nervi. So what I'm going to say are just very few things, and trying to be respectful towards this giant. So just a few notes. These notes are just to say that, of course, there is a reason why Professor Romeo is chairing the scientific committee of this research project. Is talking about an encyclopedia, because actually there are so many things he did, there are so many activities, and so this reflects the fact that he was actually a genuine researcher. So when we will talk about intuition, I will try to show that maybe there were some points that he was starting from. So it's not like a genius, in a sense that this maybe can... This is not intended, of course, to diminish his power, but only to see that things are rational, and he is he reflects this rational approach to everything. So he was basically a hard worker and started with a strong education in civil engineering at Bologna University, and then he was an entrepreneur, as everybody knows. So, and besides that, he was teaching at the University of Rome at the School of Architecture. And these are just to mention the international collaboration he had with the many masters of architecture of the period. So, in essence, the point is that I don't think we can talk about Nervi by stretching his jacket from one side or the other. We have to combine all these activities. So that's why I'm going to talk about computation, about maybe construction, about geometrical aspects, about experimental and so on and so forth. So starting from intuition, it's somehow interesting to notice that he patented something like 40 ideas. And these ideas were not only in the field of structural engineering, let's say, on construction. He also patented something that was related to waterproofing of hulls, of ships, or something related to also mechanical engineering, so something like engine and so on. So this actually just to testify that he has an outstanding vision, outstanding capacity of facing different subjects, which is typical of someone that somehow make out of research, or let's say research is the core of his activity. So these are his comments. Of course, static intuition, let's say, because this is a frame with three supports. Of course, here we have the bending moment diagram, and this is what somehow led him to devise this roof, where he realized that the shape he chose, the corrugated shape, the core of concrete was not enough for the compression, so that's why he devised this slab that goes following this diagram, so putting more material where compression was needed. So this was not done by any, of course, algorithm. This is very simple. Maybe an optimization procedure would do that. But what about the human touch? So what about the choice of this curve and how it reflects on the harmony of the structure? So this human touch comes from many aspects. So basically he was like a sponge. I think he was somehow collecting all the inputs he had, and one of them was, of course, from history. In his teaching, he was always starting from this point. So this is very important because lead us back, because now our past is Nervi. So maybe we should start from here, from him, if we don't have too many lectures. But somehow, and he was commenting some maybe detailed things about these structures, but always very deep comments, like for instance noticing that of course the last span of the columns is different from the others. Usually it is narrower in the Greek temples. This is maybe for a constructive reason, just in order to make the last stone here equal to the others, instead of being half column longer than the others. So it was a constructive reason, construction reason, which resulted in an aesthetic pleasant outcome. Or of course, then he commented on the massive, when trust came into play with the Romans, and of course Gothic architecture was, of course, somehow encompassing all these idea of structure and form and harmony blended together. Now, again, when after the, let's say, at the end of the 19th century, also, he noticed that how this massive structure were actually somehow conveying also the static scheme that was underneath, which was very simple, and other structure like this one, where probably everything was right here from him, besides this arch is actually purely decorative. So he commented on that, because actually the end of those arch, you see then that make them fake somehow. So this was disturbing somehow, his vision of coincidence between form and structure somehow, of sincerity, what he was calling always sincere, truthful structure. Again, the fact that the supports, maybe we can use a static scheme like clamped arch or a hinged clamp. This reflects on the idea of the structure that we conveyed, so maybe a strong structure or a light structure. So what was sure of was that something like this, like the Sydney Opera House, was anti-architecture in its view, because this was just a game, that's how he called it. Because there was no simplicity behind it, there was no genuine static need for that shape.